Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Ordinary Meeting 4545 of Hunters Hill Council. Can I ask you please to all be upstanding? I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and water of Hunters Hill, and Council pays its respect to elders past, present and emerging. We're joined tonight by Reverend Michael Armstrong, who will deliver the prayer.
I'd like those to pray with me. Most gracious God, in your providence you gave this land to the Wallamata people. As we continue to learn to live together on this land, we pray for hearts that seek to be reconciled and unite as one. On this sorry day, we especially remember the stolen generations, praying for all survivors, especially for all who seek to provide care and support for them, and those who seek to ensure we learn from the past to create a better future. We give thanks for nations who are peacemakers and peacekeepers. On this night, we particularly pray for the peace of Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, Sudan, the Congo, and many other places that may be on our hearts. We pray for our community, giving thanks for our many blessings and being mindful of all who are in need and struggling at this time, especially as it becomes colder. Encourage us, Lord, to live in a spirit of unity, compassion, generosity, and concern for each other. We pray for all council staff and our acting general manager. We pray for the process of engaging a new general manager. Pray for our councillors, Zach, Carla, Carol, Ross, Mark, Julia, and Tatiana. We pray that they may diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, discharge the duties entrusted to them. We pray upon them a spirit of wisdom, compassion, and generosity as they work together for the common good of this municipality. This we pray in the name of Jesus, the Prince of Peace. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Please be seated. The proceedings of council meetings in open session, including all debate and addresses by the public, are recorded and webcast live on council's website for the purpose of facilitating community access. Webcast archives are stored and available to the public on council's website. These recordings may be disclosed under the provisions of the Government Information Public Access Act of 2009, the GIPA Act. Members of the public attending a council meeting may have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded, publicly broadcast and archived, or as an observer or other interested party, members of the public consent to the use of their image, voice and personal information. I don't think that's going to be a huge problem tonight, councillors, because we haven't got that many people in the gallery. Thank you, Reverend Armstrong, for representing Broad Hunters Hill. Councillors, we have an apology from Councillor Vergara. We have no other apologies. So do we have any? Oh, sorry. And the Director of Planning, Mr. Karepis, is also an apology from the staff. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest? If not,
yes, I'll declare interest in the late confidential item.
Yep, that will be noted.
8.2.
8.2. Yes. Thank you. And councillors, you have received the confidential items on your desk. There is a late item 8.2, which is should read 8.2 rather than 1.1. So just if we when we get to that item, we'll have that amended. Councillors, can I move to confirmations of the minutes of the ordinary meeting for 4543 held 28th of April 2025? Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Kassab. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, I'll do that again. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Item 2, confirmation of minutes of extraordinary meeting 544 held of 5th of May 2025. Moved Councillor Kassab, seconded Councillor Tanus Sleeman. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, my apologies, but there is a late Merrill minute, which will read into the index as item 2.1. This is a report pertaining to the rededication of the grandstand at Barania Park, and I will read the Merrill minute. I was pleased to see the upgrade works of the original grandstand at Barania Park completed this month. The improvements made will ensure the grandstand continues to be functional and fit for purpose for the community and for council. To celebrate the reinstatement of our treasured community asset, I propose that we rededicate the grandstand to its original namesake, Charles Fairland, on Back to Baronia Day. The grandstand is more than just bricks and mortar. It is a place where stories are shared, carols sung, matches watched, cheers roared, friendships forged, and legacies preserved. It is therefore befitting that we have it named in Charles Fairland's honour for his many years of dedication to Hunters Hill. Charles is considered the forefather of Hunters Hill Rugby. Records show that he was a member of the club as far back as 1897, and he continued to play rugby well into the mid-1930s, a testament to his passion for the sport and enduring commitment to Hunters Hill Rugby. His contributions didn't stop on the field. From 1920 to 1950, Charles served as club president, guiding it through decades of growth and success. Beyond our community, he was a towering figure in the New South Wales Rugby Administration, recognised for his leadership and vision. In 1936, his contributions were immortalised with the naming of the Fairland Cup, an honour awarded to the New South Wales Metropolitan Junior Championships, an appropriate tribute to his dedication to the sport and its future. As it's thought that the grandstand at Boronia Park, which was built in 1928, was named after the C.A. Fairland Pavilion in 1951. This is in recognition of Charles's lifelong work as in amateur sport, including football and cricket, and his dedication to youth in the district. He also played a role in forming the Hunters Hill Men and Boys Club Fund. It would be an honour to rededicate the upgraded grandstand to Charles as a reminder to remind our community of his many and generous contributions. In doing so, the grandstand will continue to bear his name, commemorating his values of leadership, community spirit, and tireless dedication to others. The Hunters Hill Rugby Union Football Club is holding its Back to Baronia Day event on Saturday, the 12th of July, and it would be great to unveil a sign during this celebration. Councillors, we've also approached Hunters Hill Rugby, and I think that they would actually be comfortable. Not only did they request this in the most recent sporting committee, they also indicated that they would be comfortable paying for the signage to be installed themselves. So obviously they're excited, like we are, to be moving into the renovated grandstand. And my apologies for not getting that to you sooner, but we did have the Sports and Rec Committee meeting last week, and we've just been getting that all prepared. So, councillors, is there any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, and again, apologies for the lateness. There are no notices of motion or rescission motions. We now move to item 4.1, application to the Community Energy Upgrades Fund, round 2. Is there a mover? Moved, Councillor Preston. Seconded, Councillor Tannous-Sleeman. Councillor Preston, any discussion? Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, Councillor Williams, that make 4 or again? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So that is carried unanimously. Item 4.2, quarterly budget review as at 31st of March 2025. Councillors, is that moved? Councillor Preston, seconded. Councillor Kassab. Councillor Preston, do you wish to discuss the item?
I just have a couple of questions.
Yes.
That's possible. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. So on page 6 of the business paper, it talks about our operating performance ratio, which measures how well operating expenditure is contained within operating revenue, excluding capital grants and contributions. And it says that the ratio is projected to decrease to negative 13.69%. To my mind, that would suggest a reliance on capital grants and contributions by the council. But then in the second box, which is own source operating revenue, it says that the ratio is decreasing from the original budget. And this own source operating revenue is the degree to which council relies on external funding sources such as grants. So I just wanted to know whether that's consistent, whether I'm misreading something. Otherwise, what that ratio for own source operating revenue actually means. Is it better to have it low or high? My question, I guess, and whether or not that contradicts, I guess, the ratio decrease in the operating performance ratio section.
So I suggest, Mr Mayor, that there is no contradiction there. So the reason the ratio has decreased is because we're not selling the $2.5 million property this year anymore. So the operating performance has decreased, and obviously the ratio has followed that. So
it's solely a function of that.
it is, yeah.
Not over reliance on capital grants and contributions per se.
No, it's not.
And then in relation to my second question, which is the own source operating revenue, do we want, so the ratio was 67.01% in FY23-24, and now it's going to decrease from last year to 84%, but do we want it to be high or do we want it to be low? I don't know if that's a silly question, but
well, the performance measure is greater than 60%. So
the higher the better, presumably.
the higher the better. But
Okay.
I mean, but that's a philosophical question, because it's actually good to get grants. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
so,
kind of where my head was going.
So, well, the performance measure is that we should be self-reliant, but you know, it is good to get grants. So
yeah, it's kind of, you want a balance of both, I guess.
Correct.
Then.
yes.
Okay, and then I just had another question on page 11 of the report in attachment 1. The last line item in the income and expenses budget review statement being the planning legal expenses. Obviously, this number is quite high, $253,000. This might be a question to take on notice, but are you able to give us what that figure was in the preceding financial year?
I can look that up.
And whether it's gone down or up?
Certainly.
It's just quite an astounding number, that's all.
Sorry, if you just bear with me.
No props. We can come back to that if you want.
Yeah, no problem, right? Any other questions will come.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then on page 24.
Don't think I've ever heard no probs in council before.
What? On page 24. Okay, I want to talk about the internal restrictions, which are cash assets set aside by resolutions of council to cover commitments that are expected to arise in the future. And I just wondered, so with the Gladesville master plan line item, so the actual amount that we've set aside then is $127,000. And is that for the production of the plan and the visual reproduction of the 3 options and all it, or is it what we haven't done to date and what we forecast to come in relation to this project for the next financial year?
Sorry, I have to confess, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I know I'm
Not
putting you on the
across that.
I
spot.
can answer that one. So that,
General Manager.
that's the remaining funds for the work still to occur.
Before the
Well, as part of the finalisation of the LEP, we've got a DCP still to finalise that's being worked on at the moment. So there's a series of things. We'll monitor that. I'm not sure we're going to spend a whole lot of that, but that's where all that will come out of over the next 6 months while we finalise the planning proposal.
So that's a forward look for 6 months. That's contingent.
Well, that's how long it will take us to.
Councillor,
finalise it.
did you say you're going to page 24?
Yeah.
That's in item 4.3.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's still relevant, I guess, but yes.
Thank you. Sorry. So then back to page 11, which is 4.2.
Yep.
Just a comment on the movement in the planning
Yeah.
legal expenses.
We'll take that on notice, and I think maybe circulate that response.
Yeah, that would be great.
Councillors, any other
you.
questions or discussion? Councillor Williams?
Yes.
Question or speaking?
Speaking.
speaking for or against?
Um,
Not sure.
well, I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to vote against it, but I have
Yep.
some concerns in relation
Yep.
to the way the report's
Yes.
structured. So,
Go ahead.
pick whichever one you like, and I'll vote the way that I think is appropriate. On page 5, we talk about the top. As a result of the budget variations for September, December, and for those proposed in March quarter, it is projected the operational result will now be a deficit of 127,174. The net operating deficit result before capital is expected to be 2.8 million. Now, in the community strategic plan that council has got on exhibition with the community, it states that council is in a positive financial position. But on reading this, we're not. And some of the justification for why we're in the red is that we haven't sold $2.5 million worth of property assets. Now, we were promised by the general manager at this time last year that that would be achieved. Now, nobody knows what the price is that we're going to get for assets. They're unrealised until they're actually in the books. And I don't think council should be relying on that as a reason for why we're in deficit. If you look at the long-term financial plan, there's a continual row at the bottom there that shows that we're in deficit right out for 10 years. The only saving grace was this year, but now we're fallen into deficit for this year as well. So to me, I have difficulty in the way that council is moving forward with the notion that we are in a positive financial position, because what I read in this report, we're not, and I've raised it on many occasions. And I think we need, as a council, to look very closely at this year's budget and make sure that we are progressing towards a better outcome for our financial position and for our community. I recall in the budget there was 900,000 for the Gladesville facility. There's 140,000 for a picket fence around an oval. And we can unpack a whole lot of stuff that's in that budget that I think probably in this financial situation are not in a position to be engaging with. Sure, grants come and go, sales come and go, but they're capital assets. They're not your operating component. So, Mr. Mayor, I have difficulty in where our financial position is at the moment, and I think council needs to look at the way it does present itself from a financial perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And I suppose it's that delineation we always need to make between our operating result and the real results when after grants and other contributions, so that we are in a surplus position after grants and other contributions, external contributions. We can always rely on some grants, but the ratio of those depends on which ones are up and which ones we're successful in. The operating result, I agree with you, we need to be striving as much as possible to get the operating result into a surplus. But in real terms, we're running a surplus budget. In operating terms, we're running a deficit. So it'll have to be, there has to be consideration given to that. But I agree with you completely that having a net operating result that is in a positive position is absolutely the goal.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Following that. On that page and in that paragraph I read out, if I could ask the director, through you, Mr. Mayor, doesn't it say that the result will now be a deficit of 127,174? Where does that put us in a positive position?
Director? I mean, those are the operating figures, yes.
That's the
Operational.
The operational result.
yeah, but that's the deficit. Where is the positive that we're talking about?
The councillor has a point.
Yeah. Yes.
We are reporting an operating deficit now, or projecting an operating deficit.
Yes. Councillors, any further speakers for the motion? Councillor Have you got a question?
Question
Yes.
for you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to understand as well, and again, I am concerned about the operating performance ratio. What are we doing to address this strategically and to overall improve our operating performance in FY26?
Director? General Manager,
Well,
if you
yeah.
wish to. Oh.
So we've got a whole program of reviewing our remnant lands and looking for, where there's cash to be achieved through that. It's a whole bunch of work I need to be doing in relation to depreciation because and the actual capitalisation of all the work we're doing at the moment through our infrastructure levies. I'm not confident we're actually reporting all that as well as we should be at the moment, and I think that will actually reflect positively on the budget bottom line once we review all that. So there's a series of things, and we need to get find additional income sources, and we keep working on that, and we keep looking at how we can do things better and save dollars where we can. So it's a 3-4 pronged approach to improve ourselves going forward, and that's the brief I've given to the new director, and we're working together on that.
And I will make one clarifying point, councillor, that the remnant lands piece, it's critical that not be go into a pot that's just dealing with operating results. It has to go into income generation, otherwise, and to actually achieve long-term sustainability of our budget position. All of those capital contributions that we'll get out of remnant lands should be going into income generating assets. Sorry, councillor, you got another question?
Yes, sorry, just further to that. Thank you very much, Nick. So you've identified a couple of initiatives, and I know we've got a newly appointed director in finance. Is there a timeline that we're going to look at reviewing these initiatives?
Over the next 6 to 12 months, this year's budget, we'll keep working through it, bring back reports on a quarterly basis where we can find improvements, and looking to, repeg the budget for the next financial year, based on all the knowledge that we can glean. I mean, it's a bit early this year to do the amount of work we needed to do since I've been here, but I'm confident over the next 6 months we'll be right on top of the budget.
Councillor, you got more? And Councillor Prieston, have you got a question? Yes.
I was going to ask if there's any scope to be investing our cash. We have quite a bit of cash, like just under $1 million in the account, I think, from memory. And I wondered if there's any scope to consider our investments and our returns on those, or whether what we've got is performing very well. I will note, I think that's in the next item. But if there's any scope to reassess that and have a look into which investments we could be making. And then to the Mayor's point, I just wondered if you could give an example of an income generating asset that might be invested in with the proceeds from any sale of a remnant land.
Sorry, councillor, on those 2 points, Prudential advises council on its investment.
Yeah.
Local government very restricted what we can actually invest in.
Yes.
Has to be AAA and a couple of B-rated bonds. So we're never going to get performance out of investments in the bond market. They will tick along, and they're stable. But
are we trading our bonds?
We manage the portfolio and trade in and out of different ratings of bonds, but it's very restrictive. Sorry, Director, I don't know if you want to add to that, General Manager, but equally, I think we're having a council discussion about the sorts of things that we can put into income generating assets. The one that springs to mind is whether or not we can get some form of income generating asset out of the VPA discussions that we're having at the moment. Within the scope of those applications that are live, and then obviously we're going to have to look at all of our other community assets and where they can derive some income generation. For example, the Henley Community Centre, the Barania Park facility, that could also generate more income than it does just on a leasehold basis, I would imagine, equally with Henley. So we are considering those things, and as a council, we'll move forward and make those decisions. Sorry, General Manager.
No, I was just in relation to things like the remnant lands, it is about investing that income into assets that help generate income going forward. You know, whether that's having income producing activity within a new facility, or whether we just go and buy something that actually can, that we can hold, get good income out of it and get a capital growth out of it. Some councils, and one's Newcastle at the moment, they have a future fund and they're investing about $120 million a year of their surplus funds into property and various commercial assets, with a return of 5 to 6%, and then looking for that capital growth. So that's sort of, there's a ways to set the council up for the future. It's a combination of all of those things, and that's what we need to get better at over the next 6 to 12 months.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Kassab.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions because the others already got asked, which is good. So I just wanted to ask on page 5, down the bottom in the income and expenses statement, I see that there's a decrease for the mini skip bins that are used at council, and I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure if it's to you or someone else, but there's obviously been a decrease in income pertaining to those, and I just want to ask if we have looked into why that is, or how we can obviously increase the revenue from that as well.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll have to take that on notice, but they're the fees we get when people hire a bin and take their rubbish away on their building sites.
Yeah.
They're either, my gut feeling is that they're keeping them on site, so they're not having to pay for being on council land. But we'll take that on board and come back to you with a bit of a summary of why it's dropped.
Okay, perfect.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
there's any less building activity in the area at the moment. So.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And just on page 7, just the rates and annual charges outstanding percentage. So the OLG sets a 5% benchmark, and we have budgeted for a 4.6%, noting that in the financial year 2024, we were at 6.21%. And I note that many councils close to us, around us, are much lower. Parramatta's at 4.5, Ryde Council 3.31, Hillshire 3.4, Lane Cove 2.43. So just wanted to get an understanding of why it's dropped or why you believe it's dropped in the way that it has, increased the way that it has, and why you think it's considerably higher than other LGOs.
Director.
Dropped.
Dropped from 6.21 to 4.6. Yes.
So we're coming down.
Dropped is what I originally said in them. Yes.
Yeah. So we're coming down because of our debt recovery policies. I'd need to just double check if there's anything large in there, because sometimes you might have something that's sort of been sitting around for a long time, but it's a very high annual rate charge, and that can sometimes offset you a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to come back to you with a bit of a breakdown of that. The good thing is we're going in the right direction, but and it's all about legal action and taking that sort of approach to get the money in. The only good thing is you get a higher interest rate on it than you the bank. So sometimes it's sort of you bring down your outstandings, but you actually cost yourself money because you're not getting the interest on it. So.
Yeah.
And we can we are essentially with outstanding rates a caveatable interest on those properties. So at some point they have to those rates have to come back to council even at the higher rate of interest. So when these things happen, we're actually I think we might even be ahead of a first mortgagee. We actually get paid first. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Lane, you've been very patient.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, and I had a question of you, actually, Mayor. Firstly, through you to the new Director of Finance. In relation to that discussion of the change in the operating result being primarily due to planned property sales, I appreciate that that's a note of a change to the budget, but given the comments made in the rest of your report around recurring income, how does the sale of the property fit within an operating income, or is it that it has been effectively an asset sale that has been misattributed? Because I'm still struggling to understand how a one-off sale would be within an operating profit and loss.
It comes down to just how it's classified in the accounting standards. So the information I have at this stage is that it is it's operating income, but I will have to review that and see if it might potentially be classified differently. But at this stage, I'm quite confident it's operating.
Okay. And then the second one is, I note that there's a plan to review our recurrent revenue base, etc. It talks about identification of capital income and contribution opportunities. In order to establish whether or not our operating performance ratio is going to improve, do we actually need to have that plan for capital income in place first? Because it sounds like we're pursuing a lot of these asset sales, but yet in the motion, it's the capital income that we produce that's the key to changing the ratio. Is that correct?
I'm not following the question. So
if we want to increase our operating performance ratio
yeah,
in the long term,
yeah,
what we need to do, if I understand this quote that's in the report, is we need to identify a capital income source in the long term.
so we need to identify operating income.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not. So to improve that ratio, it needs to be operating income. It's not capital income. But I think what we're reading in the report is we need to make capital investments in order to generate that income.
Yes, but in order to project that for our long-term financial plan, so to be able to say that we're going to have a better position in 10 years,
yeah,
that has to be an operating income.
Correct.
So we need to work back from that to figure out how we're generating that income.
Correct.
And then whether or not we need to make capital sales in order to create opportunities for operational income.
Correct.
But there are the three steps. We can't just say that because we're making asset sales today that we will have operating income in 10 years' time.
Yeah. So
to actually invest those capital.
That's right. And we can't project them forward until we have an idea of how we're actually going to present.
correct. And
Excellent.
as the acting general manager said, that analysis will take place over the next 6 to 12 months.
But it's also not just capital sales. We need to look at everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, our IPNR is out for consultation now, unfortunately, with the deficit. But
Sure.
so it would be good if we had that plan in place earlier. And then my question to the Mayor was, you mentioned that there are some VPAs under discussion at the moment. I'm just not aware of the major projects that would be attracting VPAs. I understood Monty was with the state government, and obviously Gladesville won't have commenced yet.
Well, those are the two that crop to mind that are VPA opportunities.
You said discussions. I'm just clarifying, which discussions are we having at the moment?
Well, they will be VPA opportunities that we can have.
So we're not currently having discussions?
We're not having discussions with those applicants at the moment, I don't believe.
It's well within our back of our minds to make sure that we don't let it pass without a discussion and a report to council.
Of course. Thank you.
My understanding is that in the earlier iteration of the Montessori application, and it's a bit difficult without the director here, there was a clear understanding on council's part that there would be a VPA discussion taking place at some point. Whether or not that is feasible, given it's obviously gone through the ministerial review process, I'm not sure how that is progressed or how we can progress that. But I think that's obviously a significant opportunity for council. And with council's own application in Gladesville, I think that we would, along with the contributions plan, which I know that you've discussed before, I think we'd be seeking a significant VPA out of any positive affirmation of that planning proposal, because it would be required in that part of Hunters Hill.
Yeah, it was
Hope
just about
that
whether or
assists.
not we were currently discussing.
No. Well, not to my knowledge, and not to the General Manager's knowledge. Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, following on a question from that, just wondering through you to the General Manager, in relation to the potential for a BPA from Montefiore, my understanding was that had to be completed, the approval process had to be completed by May this year, and now we're at the end of May. Is the General Manager aware of where that's up to in the department or the gateway process? Because
Yes, I am.
it seems to have fallen off the
No,
map.
it hasn't fallen off. I'll keep a very close eye on that. Given, the benefits that can be derived and also the community's issues in relation to the proposal. I spoke to the director last week. The department has requested a further information, I believe, around traffic management. And once that's received, then it'll come out of the system and then hopefully to us to place on exhibition if they approve it for exhibition. But we're not, we're not privy that they're going to approve it for exhibition, but that's what they've asked for before they make their decision one way or the other.
Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Follow-up question on that. There was a high-level meeting down there a month ago about the risk of fire. Is that something that's on the radar at the moment in discussions you've had with the department? You've said traffic is an issue, but I do note that there was very high-level rural fire people and
that may well be something the state government organised. I wasn't aware of that meeting. It was only a month ago, was it?
Yeah, 6 weeks, month ago.
What was that? Was that pertaining to your committee?
What committee?
The bushfire committee that you're on?
No.
What was it?
This was a gathering of senior graded bushfire, rural fire people. Montefiore, couple of suits, and well, I assume they were public suits. I'm not quite sure. And I was just wondering whether council was involved in that discussion, because it was
I'll take on those
in the bush
and
and it
ask the
was
question.
referring up the hill and seeing the fires and stuff.
I think I would have been advised that meeting was taking place with council officers, but I'll double check for you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether the whole thing's up to it.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Tanusli.
I'm just curious, when you refer to braided fire, for that firemen.
That's the
high level.
The higher level. Get the braids, not for braids. A ranking thing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Councillors, if there is any other discussion, if not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, that is carried unanimously. Now move to item 4.3, summary of council investments as at 30 April 2025. Moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Lane. Any discussion? Councillor Williams.
A question that follows on from
the deputy's jumping the gun. Yeah.
No, but exactly that issue on page 24, Gladesville Master Plan.
Yep.
The first column says the actual as of the 31st of March was 198,260. And then it says the actual at April 2025 is now reduced down to 127,497 or whatever it is. How can we have spent 198? Because that's actual.
73.
In March, and now the actual is reduced to 127. Just wondering how that works. We've already spent 198 from what this says.
No. Sorry, council. That's sorry.
The 198 is the balance, and the new balance. These are the restrictions. The new balance is 127. So we've
spent 70 grand.
Basically. So that's expenditure.
Yes. Yeah. So that's 70,000 in that period. Councillor Prieston.
Thank you.
This is the right section.
Yeah, great. Right, I'm with it, everyone now. Okay. Gladesville Master Plan expenditure. So just following on from my earlier question, this is what we've spent to date and then how much contingency we have left to spend, but up until when was kind of my question. For you, Mr. Mayor, to the director. Sorry.
Director, well, that's probably answer. It's probably, it's up until we finish the project.
So
That's the budget
That's the budget for the rest of the project.
I'm
of
with
the
you.
project. I would
As I
say,
say,
yeah.
yeah, we'll, hopefully we won't need to spend all of that, and then
Yeah.
it could be unrestricted and brought back into.
okay, cool. And then the asset repurposing. Could you please remind me what that line item refers to?
So whenever we sell an asset, the funds are transferred to that reserve.
Okay, so then my next question is: in the event of a sale of a remnant land, would it go into this line item for reinvestment in an income generating asset, say?
It'll depend on the land and its classification. Road reserves have different issues associated with them, but if it's just a general council property, it would go into here. So yes, normally, but some classifications of land have some areas where you have to put it back towards road expenditure or something like that.
Okay.
When we report up, we'll let you know which fund it's got to go to.
Thank you. And then just my last question is in relation to the deposits, retentions and bonds line item. Sorry, I've gone bottom up. But that's 3.7 odd million dollars unchanged from March. And I just wondered, is that income generated from our investment in bonds and deposits?
No,
Or it's what we intend on spending or investing in those products? Or
so we collect, for example, footpath damage bonds whenever there's and then so what we're doing there is reserving that money to repay that liability.
So this is money from local residents.
And utilities companies and
yeah,
you
right.
know, the whole raft of things.
Okay, then my question is, what do we do with that money?
So we just
Generally, once we compile enough to spend it on a project, we
Yeah.
will then expend it in that financial year.
This has to go back, councillors. So this is the money we're holding for development applications and deposits for footpaths, make sure there's no damage to the roadways, damage to trees. You might have a bond or a deposit being held for a contractor that's doing some work for you. So that's all in there. It gets interest on it, and when it's finished, we have to and they have no damage. We have to give the money back to those people.
We can't use this money.
No.
Oh, bugger.
No.
And is it being held in a term deposit?
It's all part of our investment portfolio.
Councillor,
Okay.
probably less of
Just
the
because
B,
you
the
said
B
that
word
we earn
in.
interest on it, so
Yeah, we do.
while it sits in our account,
We also have to pay interest back to people on their bonds, but it's a very low interest rate. It's not nothing compared to what we earn on it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit there. So some would go into our interest on investments fund, and the others would be added to this as a to cover that interest we have to pay when we repay the deposits.
Thank you. My last remark is just to say that it looks like our the performance of our bonds and portfolios is tracking nicely.
I mean, again, I reiterate, we're never going to make
Yeah.
a huge amount of money out of our
consistent.
investment because we're regulated into what we can and can't invest in. So you're not going to make 15% on anything that we're allowed to invest in. Councillors, any further discussion? Councillor Lane.
Yes, I just had some follow-up questions. We're all glad that you've come on board. So on that $4.8 million in reserve that we hold at the moment, when we look at our investment holdings report, is that sitting in the cash account, the 5.4 million? Is that correct?
But like money's fungible, so
Yeah.
It's not sitting in any particular account. We just
Right.
Put it all together.
Yeah.
I suppose the reason I'm asking is, let's say we were getting 5% on that 4.8, that's $240,000, and we've got a deficit of $127,000. I'm just trying to understand if whether or not by us holding it and not investing it is the difference between our operating deficit and surplus.
No. I'm sorry, I'm not following the question.
Oh, I am.
Are we holding it or are we investing it? Is the question.
It's all being invested.
Okay.
And the interest is all being earned.
Okay.
It's being allocated throughout the budget.
Okay, and then I suppose the question would just be why we're holding 5.4 million in cash.
That's a good question. So I've only just started.
Yep.
And my feeling is that we can be a bit more aggressive
Okay,
and look for term deposits. So
brilliant, thank you.
I love aggressive term deposits, so tick of approval. Councillors, any further discussion on this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, can I just check of the other items that we have here? Item 4.4, minutes of Hunters Hill Local Area Traffic Committee, minutes of Art Advisory Committee, minutes of CAP, DAs determined by the LPP, DAs determined by under delegated authority, report on legal matters, briefings and workshops. And obviously, I think that we'll be talking to the item 4.11. Which items do you wish to speak to?
4.8.
4.8.
4.9.
4.9. Oh, yes, of course. And 4.4. Councillors, are we comfortable moving items 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 and 4.10 in block? Yes? Can I have a mover? Moved Councillor Prieston, seconded Councillor Kassab. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against? That is carried. So that was items 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 and 4.10 dealt with. We now move to item 4.4, minutes of the Huntsville Local Area Traffic Committee held 10 April. Is there a mover? Moved Councillor Kassab, seconded Councillor Williams. Is there any discussion, Councillor Kassab? No, I have, sorry, we'll have someone read the statement which was circulated earlier today.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is in line with item 4.4 minutes. It's from David Lloyd. I live at 9 Futuna Street. Since becoming aware of the problems experienced by URM, I've made very constructive, I've had very constructive discussions with Ms. Stathis, who has been excellent, good to hear, and have made sure that any cars are moved on garbage night. I understand that since becoming aware of the problem and taking action to address it, the URM drivers have had no problems with access. We'll make certain that the problem continues to be addressed as we are currently addressing it. Many thanks.
Thank you, General Manager. Sorry, Councillor Kassab.
I just want to ask one quick question.
Yes.
So just through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to check, given that, so obviously in the minutes, and I recall from that meeting that we had deferred that item to get more information. Given that response, is that something council was already aware of, and does that mean that that's been dealt with, or is that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, given those comments, the owner of 9 Fortuna was the person who raised the complaint. So what I'm getting from that is that we can avoid this. So something will come back to the next traffic committee.
Perfect.
Just closing it out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillors, okay. Councillor Kassab, I've got a question of you actually, as the chair of this committee. This, I'm glad we didn't move this in block. This Howard Place no stopping zone. Can you, or maybe even you, Director, could probably answer this. What's the reasoning behind that? That's always been parking down the bottom of that street, and it's in the commercial zone, which is obviously parking at night's a nightmare there anyway. Why would we restrict ourselves to those 3 car parking spots becoming?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, which page you look? Because
I'm at page 41. Page 41. Sorry, Director, I'll refer that to you. Was that something that was raised by either number 3 or number 7? Howard Place.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just looking up the report now. So it's through some resident complaints, raising concerns that due to parked vehicles, access to the driveway is obstructed. So obviously vehicles are parking in that U-shaped area, restricting vehicles from coming out of their driveways.
All right. Fair enough. Sorry, Councillor Williams, you had your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. A question through you to the director. There seems to be a proliferation of these situations where we're now putting up signage in streets just because of garbage trucks. This is just a recent event. Garbage has been collected in those streets for the last 100-odd years using trucks. What has changed to cause this? I noticed in Paul Street there's a sign every 10 metres which looks really ugly and restricts when you can park there from opening your car doors and things. I'm just wondering, what is the motivation for this? Because we haven't had that problem up till a year or two ago. And it seems to be just about every street these days is going to have a complicated parking regime, whereas on some days you can and some days you can't. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, which will increase the level of frustration and potential fining of residents for just parking in their street. I just wondering, what is that reasoning? What's changed? Because we have operated for many years without needing this.
Director, I will just add, I have also noticed a couple of locations, and I thought that we'd adopted a position that we were moving more towards line marking the roads rather than installation of signs. But
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will take that on notice. There have been a few signs go up of late. The reasoning for those signs is the lack of understanding of the yellow line, and the signage that goes up as a result is really the last resort. Many measures have been undertaken, letter drops, door knocks, to try and resolve the situation. And in situations such as Paul Street, it was the last resort to do that. We don't want to do that. So what I will do is I'll have a chat with our waste provider and our waste team, and I'll come back to you with I'll send through to the councillors a response.
So, sorry, Councillor Kassab.
I just wanted to, just in regards to that, and being the chair of the committee, I can say that we have had extensive discussion about that. And at the last meeting that the director was not present at, we did talk about looking at a more holistic solution, because obviously we keep going to meetings, and at almost every meeting we get another one or two streets that want to have restrictions. So it is all of the department heads and everything we are very aware of it, and are trying to avoid doing the signage or having parking restrictions where possible. So just want to let you know that we are conscious of it as well.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, just a point of clarification. Those signages are for a specific time on a specific day, so yellow markings won't solve that problem. In the past, council has had a range of size vehicles that collect garbage, because sometimes they have to go down very narrow one-ways, dead-end streets and whatever, and we used to have smaller trucks to collect in those locations. Why isn't the solution to have a smaller truck collect in those streets where there's difficulties, because we already have one running around collecting them from some parts of the municipality, rather than going to this next level that's being proposed?
Correct.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a very good question, and one that I will talk to URM about. It has come up before, and I'll come back to you in that response with what can be done. There is a smaller truck, however, URM have those larger size trucks, so we'll start discussions with URM to see what we can do about it.
Councillors, any further discussion on this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Now move to item 4.8, development applications to determine another delegated authority in April 2025. Councillors, is that moved? Moved Councillor Kassab, seconded. Councillor Tanous-Sleeman. Any discussion? Councillor Kassab.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, I just have a question, and obviously the head of department's not here, but I just note that DA approvals for our council are currently taking up to 87 days. It is legislated the DAs are to be approved within 40 days, and as of day 41, applicants have the option to go to the Land and Environment Court to dispute the deemed refusal status of their DA. This therefore means that further council resources need to be engaged, and council, or more likely ratepayers, money is spent on disputing these cases. I just wanted to know why our approvals are still taking up to 87 days and what's being done to improve our DA processing times.
General Manager.
Might need to come back and give you a report on that, but I do know we've actually substantially improved our DA times over the last 12 months. I think we've reduced them by about 50 days. So we continue to keep working through things, trying to get the front end right so that we ask applicants for one lot of information and once only. And we're working to try and resolve issues without having to go to court. Yes, you can. 40 days is the guide, but there's not many councils doing them in 40 days. I can assure you, and the ones that do are generally those in like land subdivision areas and stuff like that. So I think we're getting there, but we've still got a lot of work to do, and it's about getting that consistency in the advice to residents and making sure that they lodge what needs to be lodged, and then we get on with it and assess it and try and work with them if there's an approval to be had to try and get that done. We do have issues with constantly having to re-advertise when amended plans and stuff come in, so that all takes extra time. But that's part of the process of keeping both the applicant and the neighbours and the informed of what's going on. So, but I'm happy to come back with a bit more advice on how we're tracking and what else we're doing.
Councillor Kasab.
Yeah, that would be great. Just on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the time stop during the consultation with neighbours? So therefore that wouldn't impact?
No, the time stops when you don't have information. When you go out to, this is my understanding, I'll double check this, but the actual consultation is part of the of your time.
Okay.
So you need to be doing other things while it's out on public consultation.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillors, any further discussion? Elaine.
Through you to the Director of Infrastructure, I understood from the previous sustainability meeting that we now have amended the tree list to identify canopy trees for DAs. I just noticed that one of these includes 10 palm trees as replacement trees. Are they, do you recall if palm trees are considered to be canopy trees under our new list?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll come back to you, but I don't believe so, but I will come back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.9, report on legal matters, April 2025. Moved Councillor Tanous Sleeman, seconded Councillor Prieston. Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Councillor Prieston.
I just have a question through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, actually, it might be to the Director of Planning, so it could be taken on notice, but perhaps the General Manager might be able to answer it in his absence. And I don't know how much we can talk about this in open session, but reference number 1225621 regarding 2C Margaret Street, Woolwich. Fees billed to date is, $200,000, excluding GST. Presumably that column is without disbursements and whatnot. That is an astounding amount of money to spend on this application. And I'm just wondering, is there an end in sight? What's happening? What's the plan? And do we anticipate more funds to be spent?
Council set a budget for that, but I'd imagine, councillors, that's something that the General Manager can give us a formal briefing on.
Yeah, and it was around that figure.
It was a little bit more than that, but it's we need to get a full picture, because that probably doesn't take into account spending prior to spending on experts and that sort of stuff. But I'll leave that to the General Manager to answer. But I would
What I can advise councillors is that there's been amended plans lodged. They'll, I believe, go out on exhibition tomorrow. You'll get a package to show you, what they are. We're currently briefing our consultants to get pricing on updating their reports. And we have the legal representation coming to the next meeting of council to advise council on process and costs and any guidance on how we need to move forward. We're well aware of the budget constraints, and we will. I've asked not to spend any money until we know exactly what it is we need to spend, and get it before council to understand where we're at in the process.
Okay, thank you. That's sufficient.
Thank you, councillor. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is
That's okay.
carried unanimously. Sorry, councillor. You can send an email.
Yeah.
Councillors, we now move to item 4.11. There is a speaker to this item, which will be, there is a submission, from Mr. Paul Marnie and a council officer, that is the General Manager, will read the statement out to the meeting.
Michael Arseles, yes. I'm a member of Sustaining Gladesville Reserve. Sustaining Gladesville Reserve represents a large number of local users of Gladesville Reserve that have involved in consultation regarding the upgrade of Gladesville Reserve and the Henley Precinct Master Plan. Sustaining Gladesville Reserve welcomes the construction of a new amenities block, but is concerned that detailed design of the amenities block has occurred without public consultation or approval. I request that the plans be published for public viewing and comment as promised by council at the meeting at Henley Community Centre on 7 December 2022 before any contract is awarded. This will allow feedback regarding the scale, location, shadows, access and functionality. I also seek an update on restoration of the playground facilities.
Thank you. Councillors, is there a mover to the motion? Move. Councillor Kassab, seconded. Councillor Prieston. Councillor Kassab, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I am very supportive of.
Mr. Mayor, before we get into it, can I raise a point of order?
Yes, you may.
Well, they've raised an issue which I think is as to whether or not we're dealing with this matter at this point. The recommendation, if we agree to it, I think is illegal, because what we're doing in point 2 is awarding a tender which we haven't even considered, which was in the item in
confidential.
So I think the cart's before the horse here, but we can't deal with this matter until we've dealt with 8.1.
General Manager?
I agree with that, Mr. Mayor. I think we should just go and deal with the matter and then bring it back out and
okay.
Finalise.
Well, we should probably make sure that that's done in that way prior to us doing this again in the future. Councillors, councillors, would you be comfortable withdrawing your moving and seconding of that so that we can move into confidential? Do we have a motion to move into confidential session? Moved Councillor Sleeman, seconded Councillor Kassab. Any discussion? Councillor Williams?
The only dealing with, which one is it? It's 8 point.
Not that one, the other one.
8.2.
8.1.
Well, I would object.
And 8.2.
I would be objecting to 8.1 being in closed session.
8.1 is the construction of the Gladesville Sports and Community Facility.
No?
Yeah.
Oh.
It is. That's not numbered
correctly. Okay, 8.1, the sports facility, I'm happy to deal with in confidential session because it deals with commercial and confidence. 8.2 is not a matter of being a confidential item under section 10.A in the Act. It doesn't comply with that, so we shouldn't be dealing with that in confidential session. So I'd move that be dealt with in open council.
Sorry, councillor, I'll get some clarification on that. Councillors, any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against?
Well,
what motion is it?
What motion?
It's to go into closed session.
One.
No, for the motion was to go into closed session. If the council wishes not to deal with 8.2 in closed session, they can come out of closed session prior to dealing with that item. But there is a moved and seconded motion on the floor to move into closed session. It has then been objected to by Councillor Williams, which is his right. But then the vote of the council will determine whether or not we go into closed session, and the vote of the council will determine whether it's considered in closed session.
Then the discussion about whether or not 8.2 is confidential would be in closed session, not open session.
Correct. So the discussion about whether or not 8.2 is being discussed in closed session is happening now. And we're just getting clarification from the general manager about his view of the section cited in the Act. But again, this is dealt with if the general manager's recommendation is that it is consistent with the Act, then it is the vote of the council that will determine whether or not it's determined in closed session or open session. Councillor Williams.
The reason I've raised it, Mr Mayor, is because I've had dialogue with the Office of Local Government and they concur with my view that it doesn't conform or comply with section 10 of the Act, because it doesn't deal with staff matters, it doesn't deal with commercial in confidence, and it doesn't deal with financial, legal outcomes. It is purely a matter that should be in the public domain, one that should provide transparency, one should provide probity to a decision.
Councillor, that will be reported into open session though. Sorry, and have you shared that advice with the general manager?
No.
No.
You should know.
Councillor Prieston, do you have a question?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question, and perhaps it's then to the reporting officer of 8.2, because I would suggest that there's a chance it could be considered confidential in light of the fact that it does deal with staff matters. So I just wanted to know why this is being considered.
Why
would we consider this to not be confidential?
why we would consider it not to be confidential? I'm unsure, councillor. I can't speak to councillor Williams's. Is that a question to councillor Williams or?
No, it's a question to the reporting officer, I think.
Okay. Sorry, reporting officer, did you want to?
Are we confidential?
We're not. No, we're not in confidential. We're debating whether or not to go into confidential. Sorry, Rosanna, there's a question of you. Thanks, Ross. I thank Councillor Williams, sorry. Councillor Prieston, you have a question of the reporting officer?
Yeah, like it's pretty, it's a grey area, I'll agree. But I just wondered if there's a particular reason that you've put item 8.2 as a confidential item.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So it is a grey area, so you're correct, Councillor Williams and Councillor Prieston. Normally, why it was in confidential is because it's normally dealt with through the timetable of the recruitment process. However, it may have been dealt with when the establishment of committees was in place, but we're not sure if it was formalised at that point. So if it was dealt with at that time when you were establishing committees, then obviously it would be an open. It was only done purely because anything that in my capacity or my role is normally dealt with in confidence due to that they are normally personnel matters. So that's the only reason.
So just one follow-up question then. Given that this then forms part of the selection or employment process with respect to the general manager position, which remains where it's about to be opened.
Correct.
Then it should be confidential on the basis of the confidentiality consideration.
Correct, because the guidelines are in there. Normally, any recruitment process is dealt with in strict confidence. So by nature of that, it was just consistency and approach. It is grey, so it's neither, that they don't really advise open or closed. However, if it's dealt with the recruitment process as a whole, generally speaking, that is a private and confidential matter for councils.
So there's a risk. Sorry, one last question.
Yeah.
There's a risk that if we deal with this item in open session, it could bring the process of recruitment of a general manager into disrepute because we didn't deal with it confidentially.
Correct. So with anything related to staff, it's always prudent to do that confidentially in case staff are named. positions are named, or it could prejudice the court, this council, sorry,
Thank you.
in the decision making.
Thank you, councillor Priest and councillor Williams.
I'd just like to ask a question through you, Mr. Mayor. Is it not true that section 10.A clearly delineates between staff matters and matters being dealt with by councillors in relation to the general manager's position? It is a separate issue, and it should be very clearly known that 10.A does not refer to the process of recruiting of the recruitment panel. It's interesting to note that it definitely was not in the council's minutes or in the. I've been through the video. When I raised it last time with you, Mr. Mayor, you guaranteed that it was in the in the first meeting of council. It certainly wasn't. The staff then proposed to put it up as an item in 2 meetings this year in a table of process, and it was supposed to be done in the April meeting, which it wasn't done. So it wasn't confidential then. So why is it confidential now? To me, I think we should comply with section 10.8, and I think we should have the discussion about the selection of that panel in public, so there's transparency. It's got nothing to do with who's being selected. That panel goes on to be a performance panel as well as a recruitment panel. It has a broader role, a broader function, and this council should be transparent about that process.
Sorry, point of order, Mr. Mayor, on the
Priest.
basis that I think that there's a regulation being improperly interpreted. So the section to which Councillor Williams refers, 10A of the Local Government Act 1993, does say that the part of a meeting related to matters and information that are personnel matters concerning particular individuals other than councillors can be closed to the public. It says can. So to be fair, it's up to our the council can decide.
It says
Councillor Lane, you don't have to call. Sorry, councillor.
No, I raised a point of
He's
order.
raised a point of order. Sorry, councillor.
On the
Priest,
grounds
please
that
finish.
regulation is being misinterpreted, in my view. So I think it's clear to me that the Act does enable council to go into closed session to deal with this item. It doesn't have to, but it can. So the allegation that council is not acting transparently as it should, to what Councillor Williams mentioned, is false, and hence the point of order. I think that we can decide as a council whether or not to go into closed session in relation to this matter, but the Act allows us to do so.
I'd like to make a point of order.
Sorry, councillor. I'd like to get the general manager's view on that. I'm furiously looking at the Local Government Act, but I just do want to get clarification on his view of whether or not that would be consistent with the Act.
Councillors, I haven't dealt with this much because I'm trying to keep at arm's length to it, of course. I'm just working through the various sections now. Yep. My view was that this was part of the whole package of recruiting the general manager, and it's been dealt with in confidential up at this point in time. So that's why it was listed as confidential this time. The fact that we're only dealing with the selection of a panel, I believe, now that I've seen the report, is that there's no reason why it cannot be dealt in open council. But if you're going to discuss any other parts of the recruitment process or anything that's been covered through the confidential session, please make sure you go back into confidential session to deal with it.
Thank you, councillors. Councillor Williams.
Right, a reply to the insinuation.
That's not how points of order work, councillor.
They do.
Councillor.
Well, question through you, Mr.
Yes, you may.
So what the general manager is saying is that I am correct, that for a selection of a committee, as long as we don't stray into the actual recruitment process itself, should be an open council.
Sorry, councillor, that wasn't the point of order that councillor Preston was making. She was merely making the point that it is at the discretion of council whether or not it is dealt with in open session or closed session in her reading of the Act.
And I'd like to make a point of order on
Sorry,
that.
councillor, you don't have the call. When you raise your hand in a polite way, you will get the call. Councillor Williams has the call.
Well, that's a difference of opinion. My opinion.
Correct.
You can vote on that.
And I also have discussed it with the governance section at Office of Local Government, and they concur with my view.
Yes, thank you, councillor. Councillor Lane.
Thank you. I'd like to make a point of order about the interpretation, and this is in reference to the Code of Meeting Practice, which also summarises it. There are two elements that we need to keep in mind. The first one is, as you said, 10A or 4.1A of the Code of Meeting Conduct, which says personal matters concerning particular individuals, and acts and regs don't mince words, and that's why it's not all personnel matters. It has to relate to a particular individual. And I agree with Rosanna. If we were talking about a particular individual,
Sorry, councillor Preston.
I'm still going.
Councillor
I'm
Preston.
still going.
Councillor Preston, councillor Lane has the
And because we're not talking about a particular individual, that clause doesn't apply. And the way I can say that is 14.3 clarifies that the meeting is not to remain closed during the discussion of anything referred to in 14.1. A, except for so much as the discussion is necessary to preserve the confidentiality, privilege or security, and B, if the matter concerned is a matter other than a personnel matter concerning particular individuals, hardship, blah, 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 blah. So 14.3 is very clear that we shouldn't be using confidential session. In fact, we shouldn't even stay in confidential session unless we're discussing something for which those things apply. We don't have the grace to be in confidential session except for so little as we need to cover those items. So unfortunately, although there may be grey areas and we do sometimes need to go into confidential session, the drafting, particularly of 14.3, says that we may not remain closed of the Code of Meeting Practice.
Councillor.
Behind a seal council?
Yes.
That's not what.
Councillor, complete. Can we just let councillor, can we just let councillor Lane finish his?
Yeah, the note at the bottom of 14.3 says clause 14.3 reflects 10B1 of the Act. That's why I'm talking about it. So the point I'm trying to make is that while I appreciate your legal opinion that you thought that we shouldn't stay closed, that we had the discretion to close, 14.3, which is 10B of the Act, clearly states that we do not have that discretion to be in closed session unless it relates to an individual, a particular individual, in the words of the Act and the reg.
Councillors, I am incredibly agnostic as to whether or not this is dealt with in open or closed session, as in item 4.2, 8.2, 8.1 must. I'm very relaxed about it. I'm not sure why everyone's getting quite hot and bothered about it. The director has made a recommendation that it be dealt with in closed session. I'm comfortable one way or the other. Councillors, we have a motion on the floor. I still need to get the general manager's take on the Act as to whether or not he thinks that it is if we are precluded from dealing with item 8.2 in closed session. I haven't heard anything to that effect, and Councillor Williams hasn't shared his advice from the Office of Local Government. So we're in a quandary until we can get the General Manager's take on the Act.
Well, I have great difficulty staying in the chambers while this item is being discussed. So I am a person of that it does actually deal with. So to your point about whether it's about person, I am that person. For reasons that you may or may not be aware of. As I say, if it was just, the matter will be referred to Open Council and the panel
Will be announced, yes.
So the fact that I think I need to be out of the chamber and it needs to not be a open, broadcast meeting, because I don't know what else you may discuss as part of that. I believe it needs to be in closed session, but you certainly have to bring it out into open session when you make your decision. But I am that person in the room tonight. So, you know, whilst I hear what you're saying, it is an individual. That individual's me. So I think you need to go into confidential, deal with it, and then come back out. And I don't know what the brief was to the Department of Local Government, but on that basis, that's my advice.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Prieston.
Can I speak in favour of the motion to
You
move
may.
into confidential session? Thank you. I will just make a couple of remarks. Section 10B of the Local Government Act actually says a meeting is not to remain closed during the discussion of anything referred to in 10A if the matter concerned is a matter other than a personnel matter concerning particular individuals. So I reject Councillor Lane's point of order because it's wrong. And the only reason that I'm in favour of moving into confidential session truly is because I've heard from the director that it's her recommendation to avoid the risk that we bring the whole recruitment process into disrepute. That's the only reason. At the end of the day, it gets announced in open session. I'm all for transparency. It's not an issue of whether or not council is being transparent in its decision making. This is a relatively sensitive matter. It has the potential to, even if accidentally, bring the whole, you know, process into disrepute. And I just reject the notion that it reflects council's willingness or openness to act transparently. So the interpretation of the Act in plain English is that it is not imperative, but it is optional in this case to move into closed session. So the councillors, in my view, can, at their discretion, vote as they do on many and multiple motions during the course of a council meeting as to whether or not this is dealt with in closed session. However, my view, and the reason that I'm speaking in favour of the motion to move into confidential session, is not because I don't believe in transparency and not because I want to be in, it's because I don't want to be in contravention of the process that we need to undertake in relation to the recruitment process for a general manager. That's the only reason.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? This is, councillors, about going in. To be very clear, we're speaking about a motion whether or not to go into closed session. Councillor Lane.
Thank you. Two things. Firstly, given that the motion in favour is mostly concerned with whether or not it would bring council into disrepute, I would bring to the council's attention that in 14.6 of the Code of Practice, it says, yes, in 14.6, it says, for the purpose of determining whether or not the discussion of a matter is in open meeting be contrary to the public interest, it is irrelevant that A, a person may misinterpret or misunderstand the discussion, or that the matter may cause embarrassment for council or a committee concerned, or to councillors or employees, or a loss of confidence in council or a committee. Councillors, please let me finish. And so, excuse me?
That's rich.
Why don't you ever pick her up when
I have picked her up 3 times in this last 60 seconds, Councillor Lane.
So, in relation to whether or not it brings council into disrepute, there is a specific clause that says that is not a relevant consideration. However, to the extent that this is a committee that has already made a decision without being properly constituted, that is a matter that could bring the council into disrepute. And I am very concerned that we are effectively retrospectively constituting a committee that has already chosen the recruitment panel without having a public discussion. And I think the public would like to know how we're going to rectify that. And we shouldn't be doing that in closed session. And I think the public would be interested to know why we decide that the selection panel is the selection panel that it is. Because we have gone down a path.
Sorry, Councillor, let Councillor Lane finish.
We've gone down a path in the recruitment process, and we are now in confidential session going to have to make good previous defects. And because that's embarrassing, we've put ourselves in confidential session, notwithstanding the fact that there is a very clear mandate for us to stay in open session. I also reject the idea that we have some kind of discretion. The confidential session is very clearly safeguarded in the Act and the regulations. And I'm also concerned with this idea that merely because a staff member may be affected by a general personnel and recruitment committee, that we can't do that in open session. We've already heard from the head of personnel, from Rosanna, that this should have been dealt with when we appointed all of the council committees, and we didn't, and therefore we're doing it now. And I think that if our current acting general manager has to leave the room, then he is more than free to leave the room. But notwithstanding, this is no different to us appointing any other committee member. But I repeat that I think that it is clear, and Councillor Williams have already advised us that this would be in contravention of the Act. And I think that if we're dealing with a matter which is potentially a breach of the Act and the Code of Conduct, which may be a referable breach, that we shouldn't be erring on the side of caution to do something that the Act quite clearly says we shouldn't be doing.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Saab, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, Councillor Lane, you said that we had already made a decision about the members of this.
Sorry,
No.
Councillor. Sorry.
When you finish.
Yes.
Of this panel. I am personally not aware of the decision that's been made, given this is asking us to select a councillor that will be present alongside the mayor, deputy mayor, etc. So just to clarify, because that's a pretty bold statement, can you clarify that, please?
Councillor Lane.
Absolutely. Perhaps I misspoke. What I was saying was that a committee that we were told was this committee made a recommendation to the council that we appoint a specific headhunter out of 3 that they had interviewed in order to do this process. But if that committee wasn't properly constituted, then that interview and recommendation process is itself administratively flawed, which is embarrassing. And so we are going to have a conversation about whether or not the fact that we didn't properly constitute this committee sets us back. I'm not sure how much I can say because some of this was in confidential.
Councillor Lane, I think that you're pretty much alleging what you'd be saying in open council anyway in this discussion. Councillor Preston, it has to be either a question. Yes.
Well, I just want to know what the situation is, I suppose, but maybe we can't deal with it in open session.
Councillors, we've had speakers for, speakers against. Is Councillor Williams a question or speaking against?
I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Yes.
I'll foreshadow that we deal with item 8.1 in confidential session only, and that we then deal with 8.2, which is the recruitment and remuneration panel, as a non-confidential in open council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, any further discussion? I'll put the motion to go into closed session to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried on my casting vote.
My name recorded in opposition.
Yes.
Because I don't believe it's a legal decision.
That is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll have to move into closed session. Any members of the public attending, you can stick around, but if not,